What's up everybody, Tom here with another video. In today's video, we'll be discussing why this chart is worth watching in the markets right now. We'll also be talking about our technical analysis levels for the SP 500, Nasdaq, Bitcoin, gold, and more. We just saw some massive earnings come out of Wall Street, but the question is, how's the market going to be dealing with those and whether the market can keep grinding higher? Let's take a look together right now. Stay tuned. Okay guys, well as we always do on this channel, let's take a look at a heat map of the S&P 500 large companies yesterday. And you can see there was a lot of mixed results coming into the Microsoft, Google, and AMD results. Now we saw Microsoft after hours go down a little bit. It seemed pretty strong report, but of course the market had already run very heavily into it. Google bounced very heavily after the report. Great result there for Google, and AMD was also up. In fact, AMD was trading a little bit higher in the morning and then fell off. Tesla, unfortunately, is the big failure here in terms of the market, and it fell off back down to around that 700 support zone. We'll talk about that and more very, very soon. Let's now go over to what's going on in the actual indices, and you can see here that the Russell came out of the gates incredibly strong in the morning and then kind of backed off coming into the close. Obviously some profit taking ahead of these big earnings, probably some concern over whether Microsoft could meet expectations. When we have a look at the sectors that were doing well, you'll notice technology was actually down on the day. So was utilities, usually a defensive sector, and it was more the recovery value side and industrials that were moving higher. So yeah, it was a very mixed day on the reports, and I think really when we see Wednesday market open, we're going to get a good lie of the land of what Wall Street wants to do next, because now that we've seen Microsoft, now we've seen Google, now we've seen AMD and others come out, we get a good eye of which ones are beating and which ones are missing. And actually in any normal earnings season, 90% beats. This is an incredibly high number, but even then, Wall Street is not happy enough with some of these results. They're looking at core business growth, and even though they're beating expectations, they have to smash expectations right now for the market to like them and push them through and push them higher. So it's kind of what we thought. It's really important to be watching this week. It's keeping the markets bullish, but there are some problems. And I'll just go back to the chart again that we've been talking about, which is this one, the mirror copy, of course, with 2008 all the way up to now, and the difference of recovery and the way it's been recovering. This is kind of the issue. We've got a pretty strong number coming out of all these companies, yet still Wall Street is not grinding higher, at least in the last couple of days. Will Apple and Amazon be the ones that push it through? We're expecting a little bit higher growth here, and then of course a potential pullback in that May zone, that sell in May and go away kind of concept. PCC, also something we've been watching very closely here on the channel, remained under 0.7, showing that there was still a huge amount of calls being opened. Now, I had some people saying, oh yes, but Tom, people sell covered calls and they're opening calls and doing all these types of things. It's a very common strategy. Yeah, you're correct, of course. So a lot of people are buying, let's say the value sector, they're buying banks right now, but they're buying banks with sold calls attached to the bank. So that's actually one of the strategies people are doing. It makes sense. I totally understand why people are doing it. However, I'm still paying attention to how much hedging is going on, because if there's less hedging, it becomes more likely the event will occur. So we'll continue to watch this throughout the session, and we'll definitely watch it live 1.5 hours before the market open. Let's move over to the dollar index, because things are happening here as well. We're in a fully fledged downward channel here. You can see the series of resistances. You can see how it's been dealing with one. It's just hit the resistance here, 90.991. Let's see how it deals with this zone throughout the Asian into European and US sessions. And then of course we go over to gold, and gold's been suffering a little bit because of that spike up in the US dollar. This is not a great close here for gold. It's really not showing us much strength or weakness. I mean, are we above the 1760 still? Yes. Do we still expect gold to be moving to the 1825? We have no reason not to think so at this stage, but this 4 hour is not ideal. You go over to the 8 hour as well. I'd love to see the 8 hour come back up here over the next 3 hours and return back to the 20 moving average. A little bit of a false breakout to the upside. Didn't get that follow through properly from that 1783 kind of zone. I want to see a nice little closure above that. We didn't get one. And now it looks like we might be coming back down to the 1760. I don't think it's all over for gold, but it's certainly annoying that this is occurring. Same with silver, but remember the hype for silver is about to come in. A lot of Wall Street groups really organizing for May 1st, May 3rd, all these different days of rallies, getting on TV, spruiking it, silver squeeze, etc., etc. So that will be an interesting one to watch. We go over to silver, $26. You'll see here it's also weakening just like gold. So they're still holding up. They're holding higher points, but they're not moving because dollar index is finding some strength. Let's move over to BTC. Bitcoin here holding the 55,000 very clearly, having struggles with this 20 and 50 zone. But once BTC, if it does clear this area with a nice close on the daily, you know that BTC is back. And that means that we're fully fledged back into the uptrend. Everything's kind of been cleared at that point, and there's not much to be concerned about. Go down into the 8 hour on BTC. You can see how it's really struggling around this zone. It makes sense. Yeah, there's just so many moving averages sitting here. There's a psychological point, that 55, 55, 50, and huge amounts of market structure on the left-hand side and moving averages. So look, when BTC gets through this, if it can, this will be great. And if it fails here, unfortunately, I could see us going back down to the 51.5 zone, finding that previous resistance as support and then being bought back off that. So it's not over for Bitcoin right now. Things are looking good. It just needs to clear this zone. GME, AMC fans would have been happy in the morning. We hit the magical 12 on AMC, weren't able to break through it. So of course that then pushed them down, back down to $11, which is a bit sad. I saw a few people commenting on this in the morning. Look, AMC all started because of that closure that happened above 10. That was a very strong close. And even though if you were pinpointed into it, that $10 was where it was at. On the GME side, of course, it tried to get to the 200. It did so in part of the market, and then it rejected that zone and went back down to the 173, which is where we found some buying pressure. 173, 200 still remain the key areas for GME. And of course, every dollar for AMC is important. Look at the larger timeframes, guys, to get those confirmations. We'll move over to Tesla because of course the earnings came out. I thought the earnings were all right. They were no different to really what the market expected. It seemed pretty much in line. It's very mixed in terms of the way people are seeing it. I kind of like the idea that they sandbagged, or I said bagged, their future guidance. I think that's a strong thing for the company. It means they feel very confident. They want to surprise really the market. So I think I'd remember that for next time earnings come around. However, 700 is now the support zone that we're looking at. So 720 was breached yesterday on the open, a significant time frame closed below. That pushes it to the 700 zone. So now I'd like to see buying pressure off the 700 zone back to the 720, and the story continues. Then we have resistance. If we get through there, then we go to the 745. Then we get through 745, we can actually resume the uptrend back to 780, back to the 800 zone. So no zones have changed for us. We still are sitting around this $700 price target, basically saying, look, this is where we should get buying pressure. And for Tesla fans, it's critical. You must hold 700. If you don't hold 700 on the daily, I don't know where it's going next. I mean, it could go really, really, really low. Back to the 660 would be the next logical zone. And then after that, of course, you don't really want to talk about it just yet. But we will cover it on this channel if it does occur. US 100 still trying to ladder up. 14,000 is just a huge level of problems for it. I'm actually going to put a little line through this point here. So this is the 14,040 kind of area. It looks like it's trying to break through here. So maybe we get this break with an Apple news event. Maybe we get this break with anticipation into all of these other massive stocks in the Nasdaq reporting this week. But yeah, it's trying through. We've talked about this quite a few times. We've taken the trend line from the distance. We've extrapolated that out, and we know that hits very close to this full inverse head and shoulders all the way back here that was forming through Feb into March, into the back end of March, and then broke through. So look, if we can still get to this zone, I'd feel very, very comfortable with it. That's the type of thing we want to see, but we'd love it to break above 1405 so we can get that final participation move. And then we'll be really watching the bear side, because I think the bear side could be coming back here. Let's have a look at the SP 500. Nothing changes here. We've got 4120 as the major key support zone. Look at the SPX. That's always the one we should be doing analysis on. And you can see how much it's respecting this zone. It needs a catalyst to get through. We thought it might be Microsoft. Microsoft kind of semi-disappointed Wall Street, at least in their expectations. Google did well. We need one more big company to come out and knock it out of the park for us to break through this. See how it's coiling right at this resistance? This means that if it does get through, expect some follow-on effect, maybe to the 4250, but I definitely think it hits through 4200 quite easily once it gets above these little wicks. Watch these wicks as a day trader. It's going to be a very important level. We've of course got the FOMC meeting as well coming out soon and all of that good news. Make sure you stay on top of all of that, and one of the ways you can do so is of course by subscribing to this channel, hitting that like button, and joining us 1.5 hours early before pre-market open, where we cover crypto, stock markets, and commodities all in that time. Thanks so much for the support recently, guys. We'll see you soon, and I hope you have a great day. Bye for now.